Sean.
Marco.
We are here to deliver a message from the RSA conference team.
It's an important message from our friends. RSA Conference 2025, just around the corner, where insights drive action, solutions emerge, and community connections spark innovation. You'll be there. I'll be there. We invite everybody else to be there April 28th through May 1st. You can secure your spot at rsaconference.com/ITSPMAG25. That's ITSPMAG25. See you all there.
I'll be there. See you there.
Black Cloak provides concierge cybersecurity protection to corporate executives and high net worth individuals to protect against hacking, reputational loss, financial loss, and the impacts of a corporate data breach. Learn more at blackcloak.io.
Here we go. Welcome to another episode of Redefining Society and Technology podcast. It's always been connected with technology. I'm fascinated by it. I talk about cybersecurity quite a bit with my partner Sean Martin on ITSP Magazine. But my background is sociology of communication, so anything that is connected with society and tech, I'm all about it. And there is no lack of topics to talk about. If we can talk about smart cities, cars, healthcare. And lately, of course, we have changed a lot of things because of technology. One of those is the way we work. I mean, look at this. If you're watching the video, I'm with someone on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. It was not too long ago. And we're here having a conversation. And we're actually going to talk about the future, or the present actually already, of work. And we're going to do that with Sara Daw, all the way from the UK. And she's going to tell us a little bit about herself and why she wrote the book that she wrote and that we're going to talk about. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Marco. So yes, I'm Sara Daw. I'm the Group CEO of the CFO Centre Group, the Liberty Group, and very interested in the future of work. Our business provides fractional C-suite professionals to growing SMEs and larger organisations. And it's a different way of working that challenges the employment model. Very interested in that, and also studying and researching this area more fully.
Good. We need to understand what's going on. As I often joke, do we use technology to improve our life, our experience, the way humanity works and the way we interact with people, or are we just sucked in by what I like to call blinking lights and funny noises and we just follow what is possible? So doing some research, understanding the psychology and how things has been changing, I think is very important. And how did you get passionate about this? What's the background and the reason why you started working in this field?
Yeah, so it goes back over 20 years now, and actually it was from necessity. So I'd left corporate and done an MBA, and then was thinking about my next move back into the working environment. I just got married and I was having a family, and I couldn't see myself holding down a really high-powered corporate role and being there for my children. And yet I couldn't also see a job that enabled me to do that. So at the time, it was just the concept of a part-time or fractional CFO was just beginning to arrive in the world. And I was a CFO. I'd done that role. And I thought, I can do this. So set myself up. Actually, after talking to someone who had a portfolio of non-exec roles, I thought, actually, I could work with a portfolio of SMEs. They don't need me full-time. They don't want my skill set full-time. They can't afford it full-time, but they do need it. So I could work with 3, 4, 5 of them, however many days I wanted to work, And I could also spend perhaps some of my week with my children and bring them up and be close to them. And I could work locally with these businesses. So that's how it started. I connected with my business partner, and he was already doing it and had founded the business. I joined up, and off we went. So it was disillusionment with corporate life, and the fact that I wanted flexibility, variety, control over my life, agency, and I couldn't see how I could do that in an employed environment.
Yeah, many times good things come from necessity, right? It makes you think.
Yeah.
So my experience for the longest time has been to work in advertising and branding, and I feel like when you do that, you're always kind of part-time. You're kind of fractional because you work with a lot of different companies. You're a consultant. So let's get into, we didn't used to call it fractional, and now even in cybersecurity there is fractional CISO, fractional CMOs, and all of that. So can you help us and the audience maybe understand and the definition of that, especially because you focus on C-level, so it's not a part-time as any job, but actually being a C-suite level of part-time. So let's help me to define that.
Yeah, so I mean, we actually coined the phrase part-time here in the UK when we first started. Actually, most of the people that worked with us at that point didn't really like that terminology because it implied that they didn't work.
Right, why did you change it?
Yeah. And the fractional word, I think, sums it up quite nicely in terms of it hasn't got those connotations of not being committed. And sometimes part-time has that connection. So fractional, part-time, whatever you want to call it, portfolio, what it means is that instead of working for one business and being fully and gainfully committed to just that one organization, we work with a range of clients, a range of businesses, and it might be a day a week for one, 2 days a month for another, a day a month for someone else. So we might work full time, we might work 4 days, 3 days, it doesn't really matter. That's up to the individual, and that brings the flexibility and the variety that they have. Yet the key thing is making sure that every business we work with is dedicated and gets the amount of time that they need. And it helps to build some flexibility and some sort of gaps into the schedule so that we can dial our time up and down. And the key thing is that it's sort of the fragmentation of jobs, if you like. So what I'm seeing is the unbundling of jobs and the fragmentation of them into activities and work. And by the unbundling happening, it means that we can sort of sort through the requirements of the job, and fractional C-suite individuals can pick up the elements of the roles that suit them and deliver value to the clients and the businesses they work with. And it doesn't have to be packaged up in a full-time role anymore. It also means you get the right skills at the right level for the right jobs, because sometimes you find in employment that you end up doing all sorts of things in your job just because you are full-time. And actually, it could be some of those roles and jobs could be served by, different individuals and different skill sets at different levels. So it's quite an efficient way of doing things, but it's very different to packaged up full-time roles.
Yeah, I agree. The part-time is like, you're part-time, so you don't really work here, right? Like, no, I work here, just part-time. The fractional, I feel, I agree. It's more of, I'm dedicated to a specific task, a specific role, and I'm now going to stay here. And as we used to say in the past, in Italy, to just warm up the chair, just because I have to sit here for that amount of time. Now, let's dive into the core of what this podcast really is about, which is how technology is helping to change society and the other way around. So the role, are we able to do this nowadays more effectively because of technology? I think I know the answer, but maybe you want to dive deeper into it. And And what do you think is being really, is there been like a moment, or a tipping point where company started to accept something like this, instead of just like, if you're not here, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know if you really are working.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So, I mean, if I take us through the big changing point, I mean, we've been doing this for over 25 years, and we were actually often the odd one out, as you point out, because we weren't present in the office alongside the full-time employees. We're the individuals that would come in and out. However, obviously, COVID came along. I was bound to say that. And that normalized this way of working. Obviously, technology played a huge part here, because we all had to suddenly, work from home, switch on our computers, learn how to do remote video conferencing. Now, we were doing this before COVID. So actually nothing changed for some of us, but it's almost like the world caught up. And what's interesting is that the business owners that we work with began to realize through experience that you didn't have to be sat next to each other in an office to deliver value, because no one was doing that then. And actually, what was really interesting was that the relationships actually probably got a lot deeper during COVID, even though we were further away physically. So the technology filled that gap and enabled us to feel much closer to each other, because it was the only way that we could communicate often in that environment. And the lines blurred as well, quite a lot, around how the cadence of the work. So before, it would be complete days, perhaps, visiting an office. And then through the pandemic and since then, the lines have blurred, and the packaging of interaction of time has fragmented into smaller parcels, if you like. And we spend parts of days and hours at a time working with various different clients through using the technology. And there's a bigger feeling of closeness because there's more frequent interaction. So when we surveyed the businesses we work with, they're telling us that they feel closer to us, interestingly, post-pandemic than before.
That's interesting. So one of the point I make all the time is the line between real world and virtual world, it doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, there is the analog, there is the digital, but we all live, unless you live in the woods somewhere, you interact with both. And honestly, as you say, when I talk to people, and I've been doing this for a long time, recording a podcast, I establish a relationship with them. And I mean, you get to know each other. Either you're sipping that coffee on a table at a coffee shop, or in an office, or in a meeting room, or you're doing it remotely. I mean, I still feel like, we're still being human. I know for a lot of people it's a stretch, but you talked about kind of, if I remember well, like owning your work again, like having a sense of, explain that, like
yes,
because you're not sharing the environment, because you are in control of what you do, you kind of like take back a certain level of ownership.
Yeah, so the key thing in my research, which I talk about in my book, Strategy and Leadership as Service, this way of working, is that we've moved from the payroll to an access role. So we're not employed, but the businesses that we work with access our services and pay as they go, which is sort of like the way to describe it that I find that's quite useful is describing it as we're the Spotify of the C-suite. So what I realized in my research was that, because I wanted to know why our business model worked. Why do we have long-term relationships with businesses in the absence of employment contracts? What else is holding these relationships together? So I started looking at other access economy models where you access services rather than owning them. And so the likes of the disruptive business models of Uber, of Netflix, of Spotify, those businesses. And what I realized was that a number of those businesses, through my research, was that they have something called psychological ownership, some of them baked into their models. So if you take Spotify, even though we don't own the music, so we haven't got this, it's not CDs sat on bookshelves anymore. I mean, obviously some of us still do that, but that isn't that model taking up space in our homes. Instead, we are accessing vast quantities of music that we know other people are listening to at the same time. We're logging on, we're scrolling down, and we're curating our music. And because there's things like control of what music you listen to, how you put your playlist together, all that sort of thing, that breeds ownership, feelings of ownership, even though we know logically we don't own that music, we're just accessing it. So that was what I wanted to look into in my business, was to just look at the relationships we had between the C-suite individuals and the firms they work with, to see if the firms felt like, and the individuals felt like, they were together and belonging to each other, even though they didn't have an employment contract. And that's what I found, was that there are certain things that make up psychological ownership. And if you can bake those into the model, it's things like intimacy. It's things like doing things together and co-creating. It's having control. And when I say control of each other, what I mean is we're accessible, available, and approachable for each other, feeling safe psychologically. If you can bake those things into the relationship, then it sort of doesn't matter that you that there's no employment contract, because the relationship's strong anyway. And will thrive for the long term. But you've got to work on it all the time. But that's what I looked into.
Do you feel like there are changes, though, that this is going to be a little bit more philosophical, but follow me there. So I just published a few days ago, actually, a conversation with Leslie Shannon. She's a head of Nokia, developing and scouting for the cool new thing. She has the best job in the world. I mean, really. She's really fun. She wrote a couple of books. One is about being native digital, like native digital people that are born at the time and they never even know what the rotary phone is, and they wouldn't even know how to use it apparently, but they're familiar with smartphone. They couldn't even think about a time where smartphone were not there, social media and all of this. And she had an entire approach on how their entire brain, their business model, think different, because they're able to think abstract in the digital world, which is also the real world, right? So is there a generational push to make all of this work remotely more acceptable, or even more than acceptable, but actually better?
I think it's really interesting to look at the generational changes, like you've just illustrated there with the adoption of phone technology. So if I take that through to the sort of working environment, what I think is quite interesting is the Generation Zs coming through right now are more used to using technology and to communicate and to work. So if I take my children, for example, they like messaging rather than picking the phone up to talk to each other or to talk to someone else. And I think they're also adopting gig working, the access economy, as a default, perhaps a bit more than we ever did. So for my generation, Generation X, we've gone to corporate, we've done the full-time thing, we've said no to that, and we've come into the gig economy at a later stage. I'm seeing the younger generations, just as you just alluded to, taking it up from the get-go. Now, this is interesting because the remoteness, I think they are comfortable doing the remoteness, and actually need to be almost, it's the reverse to my generation. They need to be encouraged to build the relationships outside of technology as well as with technology. So it's an and, not an or, because there are definitely, I feel, advantages of seeing the holistic the relationship in a holistic sense, not just through a Zoom call, etc. And I also think that they also do need to learn from each other and to learn from others. And how are they going to do that if they do everything so remotely? And how are they also going to do it if they don't join corporate? Because the other trend I'm seeing is that they're sometimes shunning the corporate world there's a distrust there. And actually, they'd rather sort of do gigging and portfolio work all the way through. But how are they going to learn if they don't have that corporate experience? And this is where I think mentoring needs to come in. I think we need to adopt technology to help us remotely and in person. And I also think there needs to be a role of mentoring the new generations through, because otherwise they're not going to be able to learn the skills to then be able to, add the value at a higher level. So I think and I don't have all the answers to how they're going to do that, but those are some of the challenges that I see in the future of work.
We never have all the answers in this conversation. If we had the answers, we wouldn't be having this conversation anyway. I want to ask you one more thing, and then I want to put the futurist hats on and have some fun. Imagine what the future will be. The C-level. So you talk about this is your research applies to the C-level. Is exclusively related to them, or what are the vertical or the industry or the type of jobs that eventually could then trickle down to those that are not in the C-level position? And why is it, I'm going to say easier with the air quotes for those listening, I'm doing the air quote, easier for somebody in the management position to actually adopt this kind of work?
Yes, that's a really good question. So I see I talk about the C-level end of the gig economy being the privileged end, if you like. So they're doing it out of choice, freedom of choice, as opposed to necessity. And they're searching autonomy, independence, agency, all that sort of stuff. But they also want to belong, which is why organizations like mine exist, because we're then a community. But you can find your own community informally as well, but we still want to be human beings and belong. But why do they do it as opposed to the younger generations? And I do feel that lower levels can do it as well. One of the reasons is that to get going, because this is still quite a new way of working, to get going, you start off with no business, and you've got to support yourself through a period where you're investing to learn the skills to find, to win, and to keep clients to work with. And you need a financial runway to do that. And what you often find is that the lower level management layers, perhaps they're going, they've got more dependents, their kids are still at home. If they've got kids, they've got young kids. They haven't got so much resources behind them. And so it's a bigger job for them to, really invest to learn the skills and to build their this way of working. I am seeing it happen. It's not that it's not happening, but I think it's easier when you've already got an established career, you've done the corporate role, you've got some resources behind you, and you can afford to change careers. But however, what I am seeing going forward is, if we're going to be living to 100 on average, we're going to be working for 80 odd years, we're going to have multi-careers. There's no doubt about it. And I think there's going to be periods where we're stepping back, and perhaps partners or family members will support us while we invest to do something, to invest to make a change. And I think there'll be, partners and couples that to and fro through that and support each other and sort of contract with each other to design their lives so that they can pivot and have, 4 or 5 careers. And I think that's going to happen as we go forward.
So you see it more as an investment for the employee than the employer? Meaning, can you just join a company that say, hey, you know what? We work from home. We want fractional as much as we can. Here's all the tool. Here's our training for you to do that. I mean, the way you present it is more on the employee's shoulder.
It's a good observation.
But do you feel like, because I see headline now, they're like, everybody goes back to work at Amazon. I'm like, okay, I think you're kind of going the wrong direction, but that may be me. But there is also that push that I find it weird, but I mean, I'm sure they have their own reason. But is there a future where maybe the companies are ready to embrace and train and support this new kind of workforce?
I would really hope that organizations will be comfortable with hybrid, remote working. I mean, I'm all for that, because I feel then you're giving the agency to the individuals to craft their jobs in the way that they know best to do it, and obviously with advice, and that gives you fulfillment and meaning in our work. So I would hope that would continue rather than being mandated back into the office, as we're seeing a few organizations do now. In terms of the fractional world, where you're self-employed and independent and working for a range of businesses, I believe that if we're really going forward in time, what I'm seeing at the moment is that even corporates say they need to innovate for the future of work. There's no doubt about it. The individuals that have the cutting edge, leading edge skills that those corporates need to, meet the global challenges that are coming at them are most often self-employed, the digital nomads, the remote workers, doing, and they're getting super exposed to all the tech and issues in a wide variety of ways that corporates could only dream of having internally from their employee base. So the corporates need to engage with these individuals, but these individuals do not want to be employed because they want to sit on their beaches somewhere, in an environment, in a nice sunny location, in a virtual world, collaborating with peers doing the same thing and learning all these new skills. So I really see that a challenge going forward is for these bigger organizations to learn how to contract with these freelancers. How are they going to contract with them? Because what they're worried about is security. Are these people going to leave them in the lurch? Are they going to go off to a more exciting project? And how do you balance off the fact that you've got these freelancers who can pretty much do what they want because they're delivering the bacon around the content of the work, compared to the employees who are the stable base, the loyal base, but don't have that innovation mindset and skill set. But they're employed. So you've got a blended workforce that these corporates have to manage. I think that's a huge issue going forward. And part of the solution, I think, at the moment, will be to, firstly, you've got to really understand how to engage with these two sets of people and how they work together. And secondly, that there could be popping up more businesses that are more like the organization that I represent, which is more of an organizer of freelancers. So an intermediary, if you like, that will look after the individual and make sure they're vetted, the right person. They're not going to leave the corporate in the lurch. All the corporates have got to create that into that skill set internally to manage those freelancers. So those are the sorts of things that I'm seeing.
Yeah, and my head is going because then I think that whatever model works for the C-level, it could eventually, with technology coming through, work
Yes.
for other level as well. And I'm thinking, like in my head, I see remote control robotics and AI, where the supervisor, instead of being present, is just wearing goggles and
Yeah.
being wherever in the world they want to be. So with that, let's have fun for 5 minutes and let's talk about what you could envision. So I just throw in there augmented reality goggles, and when Zuckerberg decided to change Facebook into Meta, I was envisioning a metaverse that we don't hear about anymore, but it's still there, where people would just be having meeting in that environment. And then it's like, well, is it really going to be like that? But the point is, the future is going to come no matter, either you want it or not, it's going to come. I mean, you said Generation X. I'm a Generation X. I was excited about the Walkman when I was a kid.
Yes.
So imagine putting on a really cool virtual reality goggle. And so point is, everything is new when it's new, and it's old when it's old. But the bottom line is, how do you envision, I don't know, whatever years from now, the future of work? And are you on the side of those that think that we're just going to become alienated by everything and miss touch with reality, or it's just going to be a different kind of reality and we're just going to change society and still be human, just a little bit different? You can go wherever you want with this.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on the side of humans wanting connection with each other. So I'm in an and position, I think. I feel, of course, we're going to see fragmentation of jobs, which is going to be and then the tasks that make up those jobs are going to be done by some of it by humans and some of it by automation, and that partnership and that augmentation of doing it together. So I definitely see that, and I think it's going, and I also think things are going to be done more at the point of sale. So, we're going to have things happening more just in time, at the point at which the customer wants to buy, so it can be incredibly personalized and customized to. I think we're going to see more and more of that because of the use of technology and the partnership with humans. But I am still very much in the place of, however we partner and work with machines, I feel as humans, we are still going to want some human connection between each other. And so somehow we need to fulfill our sense of belonging and intimacy and safety. But that may not necessarily come from the traditional, or probably it won't come from the traditional way of going into offices and doing work. I think it's going to be fulfilled in many other different ways, maybe even communities outside of work, but by task or by discipline. So I do see it being as much more sort of dispersed, and we're not going to be so connected into the community of our work. I think there'll be many communities that we will be part of, that we will draw relationships from, and everything will be much more dispersed and fragmented. But at the end of the day, still think we want that human connection. And I don't know how that's going to come.
Well, I love that you put the option, and you highlighted the fact that maybe it's not just one dimension. It's not the dimension of somebody getting a job and when he's after college or after high school or whatever it is, and spending the entire life in that environment where that become your world. And I think you're opening the door to a more, to me, exciting opportunity to change things, to live with different community and fulfill maybe that community need and interrelationship need outside of the work environment, which I think will be a really cool thing. Me personally. Other may not.
And if you think about it, if we're going to have multi-stage careers, so the old way is education, employment, retirement.
Right.
If we're now going to have that much more blurred and not not linear like that anymore, but periods of employment, periods of self-employment, periods of learning, which will be dotted throughout a career. We're going to have scenarios where you're going to have older individuals learning brand new things with youngsters, and I think there's a beauty in that, because we're going to have that mix of experience, which I think brings a real richness to learning and perspectives. And that's just one dimension I'm looking at it in terms of age, but I think that's another beauty of everything being mixed up, if you like, and losing this sort of linear set way of doing things.
Yeah, and I think it's happening in education as well. I had a few conversation about that. Big conversation. I mean, obviously, work it's a huge part of our life, our society. I mean, it's very important to look at these, and I thank you for kind of opening this conversation a little bit outside of the C level. So thank you for following me into into the future and a little bit of thinking. And as I'd like to say, if people have more questions than answers when we get to the end of an episode, I think I did my job, and I think you did your job, right? Because it's important to question everything, and maybe just because we've always done it that way, it doesn't mean we have to. That's a big thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, Sara, thank you for stopping by. For everybody listening, your book, Strategy and Leadership as a Service, will be linked here in the notes. We'll connect. I'll share on social media, and we'll stay in touch. And for everybody interested in learning more about what you do, your book, and all your expertise and knowledge, they can get in touch with you. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Really enjoyed being here.
Yeah, really enjoy. I hope everybody enjoys. Subscribe, share, and keep thinking. That's the most important thing, honestly. Take care, everybody.
Black Cloak provides concierge cybersecurity protection to corporate executives and high net worth individuals to protect against hacking, reputational loss, financial loss, and the impacts of a corporate data breach. Learn more at blackcloak.io.
This is a special announcement. We are heading to RSA Conference in San Francisco for our 11th years of coverage, April 28, May 1st.
And as always, we're bringing you keynotes, conversations with organizers, speakers, industry leaders, plus the latest insights from the world of cybersecurity.
And we'll reconnect with old friends, meet new ones, and of course, we want you and your company to join us.
We have a few spots left for full sponsorship and our on-location briefings. You can book yours now at itspmagazine.com/RSAC.
We're going.
And you're coming with us.